Whenever this situation, this topic comes up, leave it.
Okay. You see? Because that's how tricky it is.
Because you will never understand it. So if you look at the universe, it has to have an explanation of where it came from. If it's a material explanation, then it requires an explanation.
Okay,
And
why does it need an explanation?
Because anything that's contingent, assembled in a particular way, by losing something, you change the very nature of it.
Yeah.
By adding to it, you change the very nature of it. Means that it's reliant and it's contingent. And anything that's contingent and reliant requires a preceding step. I'm saying the only reasonable deductive explanation for the existence of everything is a necessary existence.
That's non-materialistic.
Well, I would say that it has to have immense power, because what we see omitted from it, what we see that's come from it, is incredibly powerful. Just our one sun is one star of more than, more stars in the universe than grains of sand on every earth, on every planet.
But where did it get that powerful?
So why explain to him?
So what I'm saying is, by necessity, it has to be powerful. Just as you spent time choosing those gloves because they look quite intricate, right? You didn't just go and buy any gloves.
I mentioned that to him earlier as well.
Just because you chose those trainers or you chose what to wear today, because you attain importance to that. What is more important than your reason for your existence and your resurrection and your facing your Lord?
Fair.
Now, in reality, the thing is, we could argue a hard determinist, unraveling of events, which is basically the Big Bang took place. Every atom, every molecule moved in a certain way, and today we're talking simply because of that domino that fell back then, right?
So you're saying you believe that or you don't?
No. So what we're saying is we believe in a compatibilist system.
And that means you have both.
So exactly. Now, how?
Isn't that a logical contradiction?
Now, this is the thing. This is the interesting thing. It's a good point you raise. How free will and how God ordaining everything, qadr, destiny, predestiny, how they actually join together, those two Lego pieces, we don't know.
Okay.
We don't know. And in fact, even Islamically,
that would be fair. So
you'll hear many people who will try to talk about this situation of qadr, predestiny, and free will. And I think, personally, humbly, I don't think you can ever get an answer that completely elaborates on that to a level where you'll understand it or I'll understand it.
My understanding was...
Now listen to me here now, right? And the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, whenever this situation, this topic comes up, leave it.
Okay. You see? Because that's how tricky it is.
Because you will never understand it.
So where's Ali?
You will never fully grasp.
Ali's missing
You will never fully grasp this.
Because you can't, because it would be a fundamental contradiction.
But what we can say is this, though. On the Day of Judgment, when a person is presented in front of Allah, and they're questioned for the good and the bad that they've done, they will not complain to God about it being unjust or unfair. They will hold themselves responsible.
Wait, why won't they complain? But could I retain the right to complain then?
No, you can't.
I can't logically complain.
Not because I tell you why. On that day, the authority will be completely with Allah. And Allah says, on that day, your limbs will testify against you. For what you've done.
Yeah, all right. So what we're saying is then...
So what I'm saying to you is that, so on that day, you'll know that you're being treated with perfect justice.
But how? If there's a fundamental query that you can't ask because it's literally sits at the fundamental crux of the universe...
But it will become known to you. In other words...
So I don't know now.
Right.
But I'll be told...
But it will be known to you, and that's why... And it's interesting, because when the angels are dragging the disbelievers to hellfire, they will say to them, did you not use your reason? In other words, if you'd used your reason, you use your aql, you use your intellect.
But how could you use your reason?
You would have arrived.
But you would have to use your reason against every atom in the universe. Like, can you just hear there's a massive contradiction, right? And it's not necessarily the fault of free will, because what we're saying is every atom in the universe, every time it's moved over the billions of years. Let's say we exist. Okay, we exist in time, right?
Yes.
But like what he was saying to me, God Allah might
He's
exist
a creator.
outside of time.
Well, he created time.
So what we perceive as time, he's not bound by those rules, right?
I just wanted to say a big thank you, Jazakallah khair, to all of our supporters on Patreon, and also all of you who have subscribed to the channel and are making comments and likes. All of this helps to support the dawah. And mashallah, the money generally goes towards transcripts, translations, and also the shorts that we're doing regularly, alhamdulillah. And all of that is having an impact on spreading the dawah. So Jazakallah khair. Inshallah, keep your donations coming and help the dawah to grow. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
He can move back and forth. He can do what he wants. He's the all-powerful being, right?
Yes.
So, but if you then naturally say, right, because this is the whole thing. For me, and I was saying to him over there, right? For me, because human beings, when we insert religion into the world, it fundamentally then becomes about, because we're social creatures, right? And like what you said, the main core of religion for you is because it's about morality almost, right? We have to have some rules, otherwise it would just be a wild free for all, right? And that's fine. So you have to put in rules in. But if you put in rules with human beings, you can only control a society of human beings if you tell them they have free will. That's the only way, because then you can only ascribe to them responsibility for their actions if you say that you have free will. The whole thing falls apart if you then admit to the guy you don't have free will.
So we're not saying
it
that.
means no, but what I'm saying is, but the whole thing would fall apart because it means you can't judge him.
Yes.
You cannot ever say to another man that he has done something wrong if he has no free will.
Exactly.
Okay.
So because the whole legal system would effectively collapse.
So what I told him,
because what you'd have in a situation is that somebody
I could opt out. I could just say, hey guys,
so
I live in a determinist
universe, and what are you gonna do?
and therefore I had no possibility not to kill this individual because it was just
it was written in the fabric of the A to B to me.
we didn't use the word predestination, not determination, destination. So what I explained to him was that God is outside of time, so he can see what happened before and he can see what happened after.
The chain of cause and effect.
So for it to all be written down, it's not that he didn't give us a choice to do it. It's just that we chose to do it and he knew where we were going to end up. So it's already written down because he's not restricted to that particular moment. He just knew what we were going to do. Just like if I let go of this ball, I know it's going to fall because that's just the way it's made and the way the gravity works. And I know, and because God knows us so well, he just knows what's going to happen. But it was still your choice to get to that point.
So this is why I'm saying to you that on the Day of Judgment, when all the matters are settled, nobody will complain that they were treated unjustly because, well, you knew everything anyway, Allah. And without you, without your power, without you doing what you're doing, nothing could have happened anyway. Therefore, the bad things that I did were also because you made me do them. And the reality is nobody will say that on the Day of Judgment. So in other words...
Well, so when you say no one's going to say that on the Day of Judgment,
yes.
How do you mean? No one will say... Why wouldn't I say it? Right? So if I'm being judged, right?
Because the reality that you're in now is skewed with limitations of what you know and what you understand.
So what you're saying is, so when I do die and I'm up there, the whole chain of cause and effect will be...
So you know now that actually...
And what will I know?
What you will gain an appreciation for is that yes, Allah has power over everything, but Allah gave me the ability to choose, and it was my choice. Now, had you made a different choice, Allah would have known that as well, and where that trajectory would have taken you.
I know. Okay, so and then now we're back to the multiverse. So do you guys believe in the multiverse?
No. So we don't. So we hold reservation on things that Allah has not told us.
That's what I told you. It might be, but I don't know.
So it may be, it may be, it may not be. There might be another million universes, or there might be a billion or a trillion, or there might be. But for us, you see,
but it wouldn't be irrelevant though, because if you could have made a different choice, then that means there's almost another you.
But then you chose that universe. You could choose which universe you want to be in.
Exactly.
And because this universe you chose not to do
I think also ultimately in life, there are certain priorities that we should perhaps engage in first.
Yeah.
So for example, if I said to you, brother, you're not breathing and you're a bit thirsty, I'd say start breathing first.
Yeah.
I'll go and find you a bottle of water. Why am I doing that? Well,
walk before you can run, kind of thing.
No, it's about priority, isn't it?
Okay.
Because if you stop breathing, it doesn't matter if I go buy you a whole barrel of water. Within 3 minutes or 5 minutes, you're basically dead, right?
Okay.
Now, so for a human being, what are the most, difficult, or not difficult, but the most, let's say, profound questions. Is it about predestiny? Is it how this mechanism works? Or fundamentally, is there a creator to start with? Why should I believe in a creator? Why should I believe in his existence of this almighty being? Because if that does not exist, all of this is irrelevant anyway.
No, but that comes, that question, the question that we're talking about now is the fundamental question.
So what I'm asking you is that, do you believe in a creator that created everything? What's your position on that?
Oh, okay, all right. Do I believe in the creator? I believe that, like what I was saying to him earlier, I do believe that there is a higher entity, in the sense that there would be an entity that might understand things more than us.
Right.
I don't believe in it in the sense of a religion.
Right.
Because it would be a contradiction to me. Right.
Okay.
Because I think, like in the same way that you say a cat's not going to understand our mathematics, right? In the same way you said, we're not going to be able to understand an infinite being.
Yeah.
Right. And so we've kind of write our books, whether they're Bibles, Torahs, Qurans, where we kind of say that we've figured it out, but I don't think we ever can, right? That's a particular group of men at a particular group of time. So I think when the Quran was written, say 1500 years ago, yes, I think at that time they had a level of understanding that they thought they could capture what they think the actual world is, right?
So could it be that a creator exists?
It could be, okay. So let me rephrase. I believe in a creator, but not in the sense of there's a design.
Organized religion. Okay.
I just think, I believe in evolution. I believe that you could have a creator through evolution. Yeah, okay. That things could happen accidentally.
Okay.
Not necessarily by design or purpose.
But my question to you is, if there is a possibility, or a reasonable possibility of a creator
like existing, a 1 out of, even if it's 0.05%.
Well, I would say it's a lot more than that. Because if you look at the universe, clearly I think you believe that the universe exists, right?
Yeah.
I believe he believes that the universe exists. It has to have an explanation of where it came from. Now, that explanation can be a material explanation, or it can be an immaterial explanation.
Yeah.
If it's a material explanation, then it requires an explanation.
Okay. Why does it need an explanation?
Because anything that's contingent, assembled in a particular way, by losing something, you change the very nature of it.
Yeah.
By adding to it, you change the very nature of it. Means that it's reliant and it's contingent. And anything that's contingent and reliant requires a preceding step.
It'll keep going back forever and ever.
And an answer for its existence, explanation for its existence. And what you can't have is an infinite series of material explanations, because you can never traverse an infinite series of events to reach this event today where you and I are talking.
It has to start from somewhere.
It has to start from somewhere.
Well, if it's a loop, it doesn't.
So that thing.
Well, even scientists would agree that even if you go for the cyclic universe, it still needs a beginning.
Something had to be something material had to be put there in the first place for it to start.
The universe, it's contingent, and it requires an explanation because it's contingent and reliant upon. So if you assemble it differently, if the strong and weak nuclear forces were slightly different, you don't get chemistry. You don't get biology. You don't get human life. You don't get any life on Earth. So what I'm saying is that requires an explanation. Now,
but then that very theory, if you hold that, why doesn't that hold for God then?
Because
why does God get to be the one thing that doesn't have a beginning?
Because ultimately you need something that is the necessary existence.
The necessary beginning of...
necessary existence that everything else relies upon for its existence.
But now you're also trapped in an infinite loop. Because why does that first thing not need...
I'll explain that to you.
Its foundation. Because what you're saying is the world needs a foundation.
Something has to exist without it coming into existence. It has to have always been that way.
I'm agreeing with
Now,
you.
whether you say it's a material something
okay,
or an immaterial something, it has to, by necessity, you have to have the necessary existence. Now, if you say a material existence, is this material existence powerful?
Is it
powerful?
What does that mean?
Does it have power?
Power to do what?
This universe has trillions of more stars than grains of sand on Earth.
So when you say material existence,
so it has to have immense power to give birth to something that's so powerful, right?
Okay, but what you're almost saying to me is that if you have a material existence that is infinite, then it's problematic, right? However, you're saying there needs to be an alternative, something that can be infinite.
I'm saying the only reasonable deductive explanation for the existence of everything is a necessary existence.
That's non-materialistic.
Well, I would say that it has to have immense power because what we see omitted from it, what we see that's come from it, is incredibly powerful. Just our one sun is one star of more than, more stars in the universe than grains of sand on every earth, on every planet.
But where did it get that powerful?
So why explain to him?
So what I'm saying is, by necessity, it has to be powerful.
No, okay, and let's say we've agreed. So let's say you could have a multiverse that has an infinite amount of black holes in it, and it's accumulated all of this power, right? So I'm saying, why does the all-powerful thing that you're talking about, why does it have to be a metaphysical thing?
Okay, I'm explaining that to you. Because every universe is contingent.
On what?
Every black hole is contingent.
On what?
Well, it needs certain laws of physics, for example, to function. It has certain set physical rules. Yeah. Gravity or whatever you want to say. Okay. But those rules have to be, otherwise it doesn't function.
So my point was...
So for you then, is someone sitting down and designing all of these rules?
No. So what I'm saying to you is that...
Or something.
The two options are... a material something or an immaterial something that's beyond our comprehension or understanding.
And what if those two things that you've just mentioned, what if they're actually the same thing? They're just the two opposite sides of the same coin.
My point was, look, there's a material world that we live in. The physical world that we live in, the reality that we live in, right, is there. And it's contingent. That's the reality we live in. It has to be, yeah? So there has to be something outside of it, yeah, that has always been there to make anything that is contingent that we believe in.
I'm agreeing with you.
So what I'm saying is that we can't comprehend, just like a watch can't comprehend that I made it. It can't say, oh, Tufel made me. Yeah. Just like that, there's something out there that we can't comprehend that made us. Yeah. And as far as we know, that thing that is outside made time as well. So when we say, was it there forever? That's our conception of time. Whereas that thing outside, is we can't conceive it because God is not anything we can conceive. Simple as that. So
then how do we make a religion and a book
so that thing...
This is very good question, actually. Dan.
So that thing which is outside, because we don't know where it came from or what it is, but there is something there, and that's what we worship, you see. Now that thing, if it's made us, it's made us for a reason. And if a guy makes a watch...
But we've injected
so now the question is, did it send down the instructions to us? Now we have to see if the Quran or the Bible or whatever it was is actually the right one or the wrong instructions. Now we have to prove whether that book is right or book is wrong, because there has to be something that's come down to. If it isn't, otherwise I'm not here for no reason. So there has to be some sort of a guide. Now I have to find out whether this guide is right or whether this guide is wrong. Now I look into the guide, but if I haven't read the guide and researched it, I can't make a judgment.
But who needs
and that's what I'm saying to you.
Why do we need the guide though?
Because morality can't be made by man, because every single man has a different morality. That's why I said there has to be a set of rules that is for everybody.
I think ultimately, look.
All right, go on.
Ultimately,
to summarize, because I think Ali's disappeared. So.
We have to after Maghrib anyway in 10 minutes.
Ultimately, it's a multifaceted reason for the acceptance of God. The argument from contingency, for me, is a strong argument to suggest that it's very reasonable to believe in this first cause, and it's very reasonable to believe that this has immense power, the ability to design, to function, to tune things in a certain way so they function, okay? But ultimately, you could argue, well, okay, so why would I be convinced about that reality?
Yeah.
And the question that you raised, and the brother alluded to as well, is that has this entity, has this creator attempted to contact me, to communicate with me? Now, if I find something like, for example, the Quran, through reason, and I would say many objective criteria, that I come to the conclusion that actually, you know what, it claims to be the Book of God, claims to be a miracle, and to me it's very convincing of those two things.
Okay.
Then I can then attribute that actually, well, it must have come from that creator then.
Okay, yeah.
Claiming to be from that creator.
Kind of like if you found a watch and then a few yards data down, you find the manual to the watch and you're kind of like, hey.
Yeah. So now, for example, with the Quran, you have a man in a desert in the 7th century who, when he came with the Quran, the people around him were linguistic masters of poetry and rhetoric.
Yeah.
The Quran challenged them and said, if you're truthful, come up with the Quran like it. And then it lowered the challenge, come up with 10 chapters like it.
Yeah.
Then it lowered the challenge and said, come up with 1 chapter like it. The shortest chapter in the Quran is 3 verses. And the Arabs couldn't do it.
They failed the test.
They failed the test. And they said, look, we have the best poets. This man is illiterate. How can it be? You would have to duplicate that miracle. You'd have to get Joe Bloggs off the street and say to him, I know you're illiterate, but you can speak English. I want you to come up with a literary work that nobody in the whole society can equal, that sounds different from the very words that we use, because the Quran is very different in terms of its grammatical structures of how it's actually. If you hear the Prophet speaking, peace be upon him, or you hear the Quran, even as a non-Arab, you can differentiate. It's the very language, and the grammatical rules of that language were completely thrown out. It was changed, yet it was the highest of eloquence, and it became the first book in the Arabic language.
Okay, fair enough.
Not only that, every chapter out of the 114 has at least one unique word that's not repeated in any other chapter.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
Then you have a Quran that's revealed over 23 years through memory alone. There's no chapter numbers and there's no verse numbers. Over 6,000 verses. Verses being revealed randomly. Chapters randomly, verses randomly, simultaneously while other chapters are being revealed.
So how long did they write in the Quran?
Over 23
years. Okay.
No, so the Quran was written down on individual parchments and what have you, but compiled as one book was within 2 years of the Prophet, peace be upon him, Abu Bakr, radiallahu anhu, first Caliph. They compiled the Quran. But up till then it was memory of the people.
Oh, so it was a verbal. But when you said for it to actually be put down in the book, it was 23 years later. 23
years for the revelation to come down orally.
Oh, okay.
And then after he passed away, within 2 years, Abu Bakr compiled it as one. First Caliph.
Oh, okay.
He compiled it as 2 years later as one book.
Okay.
But the point I'm trying to make to you is, in these verses that seem random, often consequential, people asking questions or something happening in war and some verses coming down, a man and a woman is mentioned exactly the same number of times in the entire Quran. Angels and demons are mentioned exactly the same number of times in the Quran.
In one of the surahs, basically,
Allah
it's the number of atoms, atomic number of iron, for example. Yeah. That's the exact verse number is the atomic number.
Oh, okay.
So, for example, Allah says that His mercy overshadows His wrath. His mercy is mentioned exactly twice as much as His wrath is mentioned. Different places of the Quran revealed at different times. Who's doing all the counting?
Linguistic miracle to it.
If you look at the works of Professor Raymond Farrin looked at the structural elements of the Quran. So in language, you find things like parallelism, chiasm, and concentric patterns.
Yeah.
He said these patterns are so complex, often one on top of the other.
Is that like concentric circles? Basically?
Circles.
Yeah.
So the second chapter of the Quran is 286 verses. It's the longest chapter in the Quran. Revealed over 10 years. Not in order, whilst other chapters were simultaneously being revealed.
Yeah.
In the 143rd verse, the middle, Allah uses the word, and we have chosen the middle road, the middle ground for you. Okay? Now, it's the only time the word middle is used, and it's used in the 143rd verse of the 286 verses. There are numerous. Allah mentions, do they not ponder on the similitude of Jesus to Adam? We created Adam from neither mother or father. They're both mentioned 25 times in the Quran. The point where it says, do they not ponder on the similitude of Adam and Jesus? They're both mentioned the same number of times, up to that point. Yet they're mentioned in different parts of the Quran at different times.
Together,
The Surah Kahf, 18th chapter of the Quran. Allah says they were in the cave for 309 days. 309 is the 309th word of that chapter.
Okay. Yeah.
What I'm trying to say to you is, when you look at all of this, and this is just I've skimmed the surface.
Yeah.
+3, so it adds the sun and the moon in it.
No, so when it says 300 plus 9,
plus 9 is
if you go for the lunar calendar, it's 309. If you go for the solar calendar, it's 300. So, okay. Now the point I'm trying to make to you is, a man in a desert in the 7th century.
So you're saying he was illiterate as well?
Known to be illiterate by his people. Challenges the greatest linguists and masters of his time. And they, even despite some of them not accepting Islam, they say that his words are magic. In other words, this is beyond the capability or capacity. Not only that, the Quran uses terms that the Arabs never used linguistically.
Okay.
So Allah, for example, says, Wal Asr. Allah swears by time. Arabs said, what is this? We've never used this term, swearing by time. But it's so eloquent, it's so deep. but we've never used these type of terms.
I was always explaining to him that.
Or the owner of the Day of Judgment. The companion said, owner of the Day of owner to own time, to own the Day of Judgment. This concept, so it comes with completely unique ways of writing.
Yeah, the way he used the language was very revolutionary. For the time.
Not only that, but the Arabs knew that they sent their best poets to try to defeat Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And they came back and they said, I need some time to think. And when they came back, they said, look, the only thing I can say is magic. Because these words can't be the words of a human being. They're just so unique, so linguistically so powerful. And they're so different from the very language that the Arabic grammar, the rules, it goes against everything. So you need to find a layperson who's illiterate, who comes up with a unique literary masterpiece
better than Shakespeare.
That nobody can defeat. Not Shakespeare, not any of the authors, the writers, the poets of the time. Not only that, but the linguistic structures of the language itself, even though they're English words, but they're structured in a unique and a different way that you've never used before. So for us as Muslims, we say that this is why I'm telling you that when we talk about qadr or destiny, predestiny, yes, those things are very interesting to talk about. But fundamentally, they don't change the foundational concepts of the Quran is a miracle of God.
And like, if you're trying to breathe, then do you need water, basically?
Yeah.
Like, so first things first.
First things first. Start breathing, man.
I was always explaining to him that
I need to shoot though.
But before you go, take the shahada, man. I'm
not going to change my mind.
I've been trying for years.
It was interesting talking to you.
No, but also one more thing I want to explain to him is that when you read the Quran with the was it explanation? Not translation, but not I told him that it's better to read
Arabic
tafsir because it explains the verses.
Yes.
So so if you could just give him a little.
Oh, thank you so much. Jazakallah khair.
Just
no sugar.
give him a little understanding of tafsir and stuff like that. I think that would be beneficial. So
the Arabic is a very, very rich language.
Yeah.
So, for example, the Arabs may have over 100 words for just camel. So in English, you'd say camel.
Yeah.
But in Arabic, what type of camel it is?
Yeah.
From the color to the eyelashes to the nature to the stubbornness, that specific word will be used. And the Quran, so for example, the shortest chapter in the Quran is just 3 verses. Out of some, I think, 15 or 20 words, there are more than 22 or 25 rhetorical statements, phrases.
Yeah.
So more than the words it contains. So you can't get that. It's like translating French poetry into English.
Okay.
You'll never fully appreciate the French poetry because language doesn't transfer like that.
So is it kind of like if you're reading a book, you have to have like a thesaurus with you or something?
Yeah, so you have to have somebody who's explained this word is used because...
Can't you have a book that has it? Does it have to be a scholar?
No, so we have scholarly works and books that they've written as well, which give tafsir, which give explanation. Because some things in the Quran, for example, Allah says, in it are verses that are explicit and they form the foundation.
When you mean explicit, as in it's clear, what you're reading is literally how it translates.
Right, and they form the foundation of the religion. Okay. And then there are ambiguous verses
that require interpretation.
And the people with a disease in their heart will turn to the ambiguous ones.
Oh, okay, so they can mince words and kind of pick and choose what
so then they can do evil acts and say, the Quran tells me to do it because of this verse or that verse. Okay. And Allah warns us against that. And that's why it says in the Quran that when you don't know, go to the people who do know. In other words, the scholars, the people who are trained in linguistics, trained in the Arabic, trained in the Hadith, trained in the Quran. And obviously they'll have a much better insight because it's just about the power of the language itself.
No. That's fair. I get that. But listen, I need to shoot. But it was very
What I would say to you, my brother, is this though. Rather than it be just something of interest.
Yeah.
Just as you spent time choosing those gloves because they look quite intricate, right? You didn't just go and buy any gloves. Just because you chose those trainers or you chose what to wear today. Because you attain importance to that. What is more important than your reason for your existence? And your resurrection, and you're facing your Lord.
Fair.
And if that is a reality, and I say if, it's far more important than the time we invest for the car that we're going to buy or the phone that we're going to get, right?
Yeah.
So what I would say to you, my brother, is just look into it with some vigor and some passion. If what I've told you is true, at least say, you know what, that's a strong reason to accept it. And I'll accept it. And if you're afraid of the changes, or you're afraid that people will look differently at you, remember that on the day of judgment, when Allah asks a soul, why were you silent on such and such a matter? And the person would say, because of the reaction of the people. Allah will say to that person, it was better that you feared me.
No, yeah, that makes more sense.
Don't worry about the people.
Yeah.
Don't worry about life becoming difficult for you because you have to make changes. But worry about the fact that I have to face my Lord and I want to be good in that position with my Lord, my place with my Creator.
20 years, inshallah. 20 years I've been trying to explain to him.
There's
But you've done it in 5 minutes.
People have been in journeys for 30 years. 40 years.
Inshallah.
You know,
Inshallah.
when Allah opens up their heart, but all I say to you look, is this: when you go home today, all of the prophets of Allah, they put their faces onto the ground and they worship their Lord. We find that in the Bible, we find that in the Old Testament. Just put your face onto the ground, say, if God, you exist, open up my heart to you. Show me the evidence. Show me the reasons and I will accept it. And if you're sincere, inshallah, Allah will open up your heart.
Listen, it was nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you
Have
too.
a good day.
He's a good friend. He's a good friend, I can tell.
I try.
See you later, guys.